Which one of you will survive this year's purge?
The soul of our country is at stake. The purge targets the poor and the innocent.
The senator's going to win, and she's going to make real changes, too.
It is a night that is defining our country.
It's time to do something about that, Senator.
The purge has to come to an end.
Is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. Our campaign represents a true existential threat like they haven't seen before. This is not simply another four-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. This is a struggle for the survival of our nation, and this will be our last chance to save it. This election will determine whether we're a free nation or whether we have only the illusion of democracy, but are in fact controlled by a small handful of global special interests rigging the system, and our system is rigged. This is reality. You know it, they know it, I know it, and pretty much the whole world knows it. The Clinton machine is at the center of this power structure. We've seen this firsthand in the WikiLeaks documents, in which Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty in order to enrich these global financial powers, her special interest friends, and her donors. Honestly, she should be locked up. The most powerful weapon deployed by the Clintons is the corporate media, the press. Let's be clear on one thing. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest, no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves. Anyone who challenges their control is deemed a sexist, a racist, a xenophobe. They will lie, and then again, they will do worse than that. They will do whatever is necessary. The Clintons are criminals, remember that. This is well documented, and the establishment that protects them has engaged in a massive cover-up of widespread criminal activity at the State Department and the Clinton Foundation in order to keep the Clintons in power. They knew they would throw every lie they could at me and my family and my loved ones. They knew they would stop at nothing to try to stop me. Nevertheless, I take all of these slings and arrows gladly for you. I take them for our movement so that we can have our country back. I knew this day would arrive. It's only a question of when. And I knew the American people would rise above it and vote for the future they deserve. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. Our great civilization has come upon a moment of reckoning. I didn't need to do this, folks, believe me. I built a great company, and I had a wonderful life. I could have enjoyed the fruits and benefit of years of successful business deals and businesses for myself and my family, instead of going through this absolute horror show of lies, deceptions, malicious attacks. Who would have thought? I'm doing it because this country has given me so much, and I feel so strongly that it's my turn to give back to the country that I love. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
Die internationale Finanz, sie blieb brutal rücksichtslos, sie presste unser Volk aus, soweit sie konnte. Die Staatsmänner der alliierten Nationen, sie blieben hartherzig. Im Gegenteil, man sagte damals ganz eiskalt, dass wir 20 Millionen Deutsche zu viel seien. 1939 haben nun diese Westmächte die Maske fallen lassen. Sie haben Deutschland die Kriegserklärungen geschickt. Trotz all unserer Versuche, trotz unserem Entgegenkommen. Sie geben es heute ganz ungeniert selber zu. Jawohl, Polen hätte wahrscheinlich eingewilligt, aber das wollten wir nicht. Sie geben es heute zu, dass es möglich gewesen wäre, leicht eine Verständigung herbeizuführen. Aber sie wollten das nicht. Sie wollten den Krieg. Guten! Das haben mir einst meine inneren Gegner auch gesagt. Ich habe ihnen auch so auf die Hand gegeben. Sie haben sie zurückgestoßen. Sie schrien auch, nein, nicht Versöhnung, nicht Verständigung, sondern Kampf. Gut, sie haben den Kampf bekommen. Und ich kann Frankreich und England nur sagen, auch sie werden den Kampf bekommen. Wenn ich diese ausländische Propaganda ansehe, dann wird mein Vertrauen in unseren Sieg unermesslich. Denn diese Propaganda habe ich ja schon einmal erlebt. Fast 15 Jahre lang war diese Propaganda gegen uns gemacht worden. Meine ganzen Parteigenossen erinnern sich an diese Propaganda. Es sind dieselben Worte, dieselben Phrasen. Und wenn wir genauer hinschauen, sogar die gleichen Köpfe. Dasselbe Dialekt. Führer und Volk haben heute eine Einsicht, dass es keine Verständigung gibt ohne eine klare Durchsetzung unseres Rechtes. Und dass wir nicht wollen, dass vielleicht in 2 oder 3 oder 5 Jahren der Streit von Neuem entbrennt um unsere Rechte. Dass aber hier das Recht von 80 Millionen zur Diskussion steht, nicht eine Partei oder eine Bewegung. Denn was bin ich endlich? Ich bin nicht deutsches Volk als dein Sprecher. Ich bin euch der Vertreter deines Rechts. Das Volk hat mir sein Vertrauen geschenkt. Ich werde nicht dieses Vertrauenswürdig erweisen und will dabei nicht den Blick auf mich selbst oder meine Umwelt, sondern will den Blick auf die Vergangenheit und in die Zukunft wenden. Ich möchte vor der Vergangenheit und vor der Zukunft in Ehren bestehen.
During the current political charade for the 2016 presidency, the American people and bystanding world have been undergoing a long and enduring trial of media-induced trauma-based mind control and thought management. We have recognized an aggressive campaign of manipulation, persuasion, and indoctrination within the news and media alliances. What do I mean by alliance? This is the group effort accomplished by all levels of media, zeroing in on a single target with a shared goal. News and social media technology, sports and entertainment, music, advertisement and Hollywood, corporate and political groups, all sources of media in a close-knit alliance dedicated to producing a new age socialist monostate / monoculture. To accomplish this goal, similar to the works of Antonio Gramsci or Edward Bernays, it is imperative that they engineer our perspectives. The easiest way to succeed in this is by implementing the target goal perspectives into the social culture. By this, these perspectives become attached to the identity and go unquestioned or contested because they are now normalized, enculturated, and accepted through a deviously achieved consensus. Groupthink has been accomplished here. When people think things are normal, they are easily accepted, and anything can be normalized through the proper use of media and technology. If you tell someone a lie enough, or if you plaster that lie in every magazine, in all the movies and news reports, and every celebrity's mouth or Twitter account, well, they will believe that lie. This is the importance of recognizing agendas. Conspiracies take research and documentation to uncover, but agendas are put in your face, and they leave patterns, and only require an awakened eye and ear to recognize. Agendas comprise these new social perspectives we are discussing here. These new on-the-scene, out-of-left-field perspectives that the media is skillfully normalizing before our eyes. Now, we have discussed these agendas in depth for some time now, but for new viewers, we can briefly name the prime concepts being hammered into our minds at every media level possible. And what better time to hammer home social engineering agendas than during an election? Probably the only time of year when you could nearly get the undivided attention of the nation before you. It's the perfect mousetrap. Well, Black Friday would be an honorable mention as well, but that's another conversation. Anyhow, for all those wide awake, it is very easy to see the social media campaign pushing race and gender politics, gay and transgender propaganda, patriotism versus immigration dialectics, gun violence and gun control, climate change and pseudo-disease scares, and of course the cancerous social justice propaganda.
I feel like this whole social justice movement is a reaction to a culture that is basically set up on trauma-based mind control. And so these kids are feeling oppressed and they're feeling abused and they're feeling put upon, but they don't really have an enemy to blame because they don't know about dark occult and they don't know about mind control. And so they, blame black people, blame white people, and poor people blame rich people. And they're trying to put blame somewhere because they don't know why they're feeling abused. And that's why you have these safe spaces that are being put up on campuses, because that's one major thing that a trauma-based mind control victim is never feels safe anywhere.
And the Lord laid on him the iniquity of us all.
Guess what else he said? Corinthians 13, if I speak in tongues of men or angels but do not love, I am a resounding gong and cymbal.
That's right, and you guys who are sinning are not loving. Sin is the opposite of love.
You are not loving.
And all I hear tonight, or all I hear today from you guys sinning is, these gongs, these, clanging gongs. Because sin is not loving. You don't love God when you sin against him. You don't love your neighbor when you sin against them. Sin is the opposite of love. That's why God's law is love. So you guys talk about love, 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 while you sin, sin, sin. Well, that's incoherent. That makes no sense at all.
It seems like the closer we get to November, the more intense the media agenda onslaught becomes. Is it just a coincidence that every story or current event involves some degree of rhetoric spouting black or white race-based details? Endless and repetitive reports of the persecution of homosexuals, transgendered people, and even women. Not to say there isn't a level of discrimination and persecution in the world regarding these concepts, but the rate of the exposure that is going on does not seem organic, does it? It is clear that the management of the fabricated conflicts is being utilized not only to divide our nation and debilitate our culture, but to destroy all forms of distinction, to eliminate the individual and manufacture the global citizen, one which accepts all and any form of living, where morality is relative to the subject. Right and wrong becomes a gray area. One's personal choice supersedes natural order and biological foundations. Fantasy replaces reality. Identity becomes a feeling, a style, transient, and no longer a stable, balanced, and healthy, intrinsic part of the human being. We become malleable, programmable databases. Endless choices and the removal of rules and order creates a blanket social structure of confusion. An anything goes society, a culture based on decadence. An old Fabian social technique of slow cultural evolution through a guided destabilization over time. This is how a communist monostate is created. By destroying a group's order, so a new order can be provided by the establishment. Therefore, what is sold and promoted as social justice, liberation, and freedom is in fact a disguised form of fascism, designed to bind society to their newfound desires, pride, and lusts. Freedom now becomes bondage, and the state controls your daily fix of sex, drugs, and liberation. With all this being important, the true core is in fact very simple and usually unnoticed. At the core of all this force-fed confusion and social politics is one simple goal: to destroy and remove the influence of the natural order of the Most High God. Within this is the mandatory removal of Christian morality. Because a society with true Christian morals and righteous order could never be manipulated into a secular, identity and ego-based culture of the monostate. So really, though the agendas are numerous and the confusion is elaborate and runs deep, the end goal is to get you to deny there is a God. Deny your moral responsibility to obey your Heavenly Father. Because without a true and living Creator to love and obey and give us a natural order, the elite state can become the new form of God and provide us with a reckless and unnatural one. So where are we going with all this? To understand how these agendas are being indoctrinated into the public, we must understand the purpose of the indoctrination, which is an ego-driven, genderless, lawless, hive-minded population of creatures that belong to and worship the state, and collectively deny the relevance and existence of the Creator. A brave new world, just as Huxley saw it. Clean slates to be shaped and molded as Locke would have had it. Creatures that are too foolish to develop on their own and require controlled handling, like Machiavelli. The Republic, the New Babylon, where the lot of cattle is governed by a small elite cluster. The Platonic dream coming alive. The many workers of Lucifer and all of their numerous philosophies and motives built upon one another age by age and generation by generation. Only now are we beginning to witness the final product being polished, awaiting its unveiling. One of the essential forms of media indoctrination is the use of celebrity. Now that we are getting close to the New Age order and global government, their use of celebrity in propaganda is drastically increasing. Even daily now, our eyes are being bombarded with endless celebrity-driven tragedies, conflict, feuds and folly, controversy, and trivial junk food. In psychology, this method of mind trauma is called sensory overload. Since the brain can only register a certain amount of information at a time, this amount will be increased and exaggerated, therefore causing the mind to experience stress. Tension builds, and it resorts to a fight or flight reaction. This is why the media uses reports like a fully automatic weapon. This causes sensory overload. And to increase the trauma in the mind, conflicting information is added. Write out lies and embellishments and fear-based narratives, included with relentless repetition. This induces confusion, fear, and insecurity, and hopelessness. Sensory overload creates an inability to properly process information and problem solve. The fight or flight reaction diminishes our natural ability to use logic. By default, the received trauma is submerged into the subconscious mind. This attack on the flesh smothers the breath of the Holy Spirit. Eventually, the trauma is then solidified in the subconscious. The end goal of the use of PSYOP techniques and repetitive trauma-based news is to create sensory overload in the audience, solidify trauma in the subconscious, and produce a state of perpetual fear. Finally, this perpetual state of fear through trauma-based mind control will force the audience to externalize power to the state, causing the audience to be overcome by helplessness that they will allow the state to fix, define the problem, and solve through its preconceived solutions. In other words, media abuses the audience mentally and spiritually until submission, when the audience is pushed in a corner and begs to be saved by the establishment. State control by public surrender. This is all accomplished at a spiritual and subconscious level, making it nearly undetectable, hence its extremely high rate of success. When the public is overcome by fear, confusion, and a rush of new ideas, it cannot properly compute them all, which not only produces trauma, but renders the group to an exhaustive state, highly suggestible, and more willing to accept ideas that typically would be found unacceptable. This is where you find the dichotomy between those whom are awake and those whom are asleep. Those awake are not susceptible to sensory overload because they pick up on the agendas and can spot the manipulative narratives in the media. And those that are asleep simply are stuck in the overload, fight or flight, and externalized power cycle, or are too enthralled with other forms of mind control and simply disregard news altogether. Though the most protected and informed people are those in the Holy Spirit, and knowledgeable in media manipulation and psyop techniques. Here, one is not only unaffected by psychological methods of trauma through news and media, but they are also protected spiritually from the black magic and witchcraft which lay at the foundation of all forms of media and mind control. Currently in the news media, we are experiencing a racial divide psychological operation. You will notice it everywhere, from commercials, advertisements, TV shows, Hollywood films, and of course, news stories and politics. The black and white chessboard game is being played desperately like a broken record. The forced and contrived use of black and white people in media is paramount in creating a psychological and spiritual climate that is preoccupied with race. And all representations must be displayed. See, this increases cognitive dissonance and confusion, which in turn will produce tension and a mode of defense. For instance, we see blacks in conflict with whites, fighting, murders, or feuds and disagreements. Negativity bait. To increase the effect of the bait, often emotive techniques will be utilized, like children or infants will be placed in the narratives. This always increases the intended emotive or anger plot. Also, assault from men on women, rape, or life-threatening narratives are very popular right now. By adding these emotive narratives with the black versus white narrative, it increases the intended effect even more. But remember, all representations must be added to increase dissonance and confusion. So they will simultaneously release stories and reports with black and white characters that are in a form of unity, love, or a positive, sometimes patronizing situation. This relates to an older concept we have discussed before regarding the push and pull requirement of trauma, the rotating of punishment and reward, give and take away. This element of mind control perpetuates instability, distrust, and a constant state of defense. So to produce this state of distrust between black and white, they will systematically show us images of black and white conflict and black and white unity at the same time. Love then hate, hate then love, friend or foe. Media is designed in a fashion which maintains there a question mark. This is how cognitive dissonance and racial resentment is subconsciously solidified. So if and when they choose to pull some mass catastrophe or troubling event from consecutive manipulation, whites and blacks will be so subconsciously divided that the one moment when we need to come together, we will spiritually be unable to accomplish this, in turn externalizing power to the state and fully submitting what little freedom we once had.